Welcome to Meganet Gaming, and today's review is going to be on a game that's very important in my gaming history. It's one of my favorites for a brief period of time, my preteen years, and that is Tomb Raider, the 1996 release, developed by Core Design, published by Eidos Interactive, and I had the Sega Saturn version, but I have since acquired the MS-DOS version and also played the PlayStation version. The reviews are going to cover those three. Again, they're similar enough in gameplay, game design, level design, and content, so the overall score would not be affected depending on the platform. The problem is getting this game up and running properly, but at the time this game was quite impressive and had outstanding reviews, and this game had critical reviews that were through the roof in a lot of magazines. A lot of 9 out of 10s and up 5-star reviews in a lot of magazines. Apparently there's an iOS port. I don't do a lot of mobile gaming, so who knows. Interesting piece of history is there was a nude Raider patch that made Lara Croft nude on the PC version. Interesting thing from back in the day. The cutscenes were quite impressive for the time. Now they look a bit grainy and a bit ugly, but they still have a lot of charm. There have been a couple reboots of this game series, as well as re-releases. It lays out the story quite well with the cutscenes, explaining that you just got back from getting the piece of the Scion, I forget how it's pronounced, and now they want you to work on. And now you're going to see. You have a vision that reveals where the third and final piece is. So, kill Larson. You recover the third Scion piece. You're ambushed. And eventually, you save the day from the evil, rich businesswoman who is trying to use this piece, this 3-part Scion piece, to rule the world. So, a rather generic plot. It's interesting enough for an action-adventure game, though. Now the question is, why does this keep scrolling around like crazy? I'm sure I'm not the only person to have this issue with it, so let's look up what the issue is. It has something to do with the controller connected. Is this the controller? Or did I just unplug the mouse? This game, in my opinion, plays best with the keyboard, but that might just be my own experience playing with the controller as a kid. But I also had the PC version. Okay, let's. Joystick options. Apparently if you have the spinning menu issue, what you have to do is go to the joystick settings, set time to false. Okay, advanced. So let's see if we get this up and running. And that's a little. Apparently you have to go into the config file for the DOS box. And you go to dosbox.config. I'm dosbox.conf. And you have to play around with the timed entry and set time to false for a joystick. And that should solve the problem. with the spinning menu. In the meantime, while this gets up and running, if you want to pick up a copy of this game, it's available on GOG, or GOG as some say. You can get 1, 2, and 3. And that will cost you get 1, 2, and 3 for $9.99. You also find discs of the CDs of this for quite cheap. But getting it up and running on the DOS version up and running on a modern PC can be a bit tricky. DOS box. There we go. It is fixed. Let's go to the game. You have even the menu systems. You have this passport, and it adds entries as you advance in the game. Here's one of the cutscenes. It shows where you're at, what you're in the process of doing, and lays out what you're doing. So you start in this cave. I remember being so impressed with this as a kid, and even to this day, the graphics don't look bad. They do look simplistic. The textures are a bit jaggedy, and there is some pop-in. But to this day, it's not a bad looking game. Jumping animations are quite good. Okay, so how do I shoot? That's the question. There's a lot of puzzles, a lot of environmental hazards you have to watch out for. Shoot. There we go, there's shoot. There's a lot of branching paths to pay attention to. The level design's done quite well in this game. It's executed quite well, and the puzzles for the most part aren't terribly cryptic and are interesting. There's a lot of climbing and jumping. Really, as far as the third-person action game genre goes, this game did set a lot of the standards. It does do some auto-locking with the gun, shooting the guns. There are a variety of weapons you can choose from this game. The game seems to be mostly focused on exploration and puzzle solving over pure combat. Combat is slightly clunky at times, and when it's not clunky, it's a bit boring. But you do find quite a few interesting things in the cave. It's definitely a linear game, but that's not necessarily an issue, especially for the time. There's a fair bit of depth and challenge to the game, but not so much where it's going to frustrate somebody new to the genre. And the maps, the items you find, and what you're exploring do match what the cutscenes talk about. Now the camera does get a bit frustrating, like many early games at this time period. It kind of goes all over the place. Alright, I go down here. Should be a switch. Now the question is, what button do I press to trigger the switch? There's a lot of neat things you can do, like backflips. See, there is some parts where you move into the environment. You have to line up just perfectly in spots to end up triggering switches. Some more bats to kill. I like to find the wolves. So yeah, here's a few games that have a lot of importance to me. They're not necessarily the best games ever, but they're games that are definitely good games to some being actually some of my favorite games of all time that hold a lot of importance to my gaming history. Legend of the Red Dragon is on that list. Super Mario Bros. 3. Quake 2. Azeron's Call. Tomb Raider. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Star Wars Dark Forces. Catacomb 3D. Games that did something different that really changed my view of games. So I believe in this, there's a puzzle someplace or another. There's a switch someplace or another to trigger that. I think it might be up in this room. So yeah, the graphics, while dated, do have a lot of charm and fit the setting. The story, while not the best, is interesting enough, and the gameplay is tied to the story in a meaningful way. The puzzles aren't terribly cryptic. The jumping and the different acrobatic things you have to do add a unique challenge to the game. Worlds are quite beautiful, but the camera sucks and the combat is a bit lackluster. But they do have auto aim for the gun play, which does help out quite a bit. So, this is Tomb Raider. Here's one of the... Oh yeah, there's wolves down there. We're going to end this by showing off some wolves. So yeah, what do I rate this game? Well, let's go ahead and get out of here. I haven't played a lot of the later Tomb Raider games. Actually, I haven't played any of them in any meaningful way. I do have a PlayStation 2 one I picked up at a thrift store. I think it's called Lara Croft something or another. I started playing for a little bit. This is the only one I played all the way through. I was quite impressed with it at the time. It's a game that still holds up. I could sit down and play through this game and still enjoy myself. It's a classic to the genre. While definitely not perfect by any means, it does have a lot of importance to me. And it's definitely a game that set a lot of standards. It does very few things wrong. And it does focus on adventuring and puzzle solving, with the weaker elements like the combat being given. Has a aiming feature that kind of helps make the combat easier, so it's not as much of a chore in combat situations. But it's a game that holds up quite well overall. It's a fun game. It's a game I'm going to put... The camera is another issue with the game as well, which does create some issues when you try to do the jumping puzzles. As such, it's a game that I'm going to put in a very good range. And I'm going to put it right in the middle of the B+ range. Like I said, it does a lot of things very well. It holds up quite well, even in the modern day. And for being a adventure / puzzle / action game, in that order, it does quite well. And really, while you can hold the game's camera issues against it in modern day, this by no means wasn't the only game to have issues with camera. And in my opinion, the camera is less frustrating in this title than it was in Crash Bandicoot. It's something you get accustomed to. So yeah, it's not one of the best games of all time, but it's definitely a very good. It's an excellent game that I do recommend people play if they enjoy the subject matter or the type of game. It'll provide a moderate challenge, a lot of fun with exploration, and when you're done with it, you can check out the other games in the series, which apparently have more of a mixed reception than the original. Hope you enjoyed the review. Please like, subscribe, and have a great day.